Society of the Snow. The film begins with a voiceover by Numa Turcati, a young law student who becomes our narrator, setting a reflective and somber tone. The story introduces the passengers aboard Uruguayan Air Force Flight 5071, including the Old Christians rugby team, their family members, and friends. Among them is Marcelo Perez, the team captain, a natural leader admired by his teammates. Nando Parrado, travelling with his mother and sister, is a determined and strong-willed young man. Roberto Canessa, a medical student, brings intelligence and resourcefulness to the group. Others, like Antonio Vizintin, Gustavo Zerbino, and Carlitos Paez, help form the close-knit group. As the airplane soars over the Andes, the passengers joke, take photos, and enjoy the journey, unaware of the impending disaster. As the plane reaches the Andes, turbulence begins to shake the cabin. Passengers look at each other uneasily as the aircraft suddenly jolts violently. The pilots miscalculate their descent, believing they have cleared the mountains. Suddenly, the right wing clips a peak, causing the entire fuselage to tremble. The left wing snaps off and the tail section is ripped away, sending several passengers tumbling into the void, their screams fading into the cold air. The cockpit breaks apart, killing the pilots instantly. The main fuselage skids down a glacier, bouncing off the icy surface before coming to a brutal halt. When the dust and snow settle, shock and silence fill the wreckage. The survivors slowly regain consciousness, groaning in pain. Many are badly injured, including Nando's mother and sister, who are gravely wounded. The dead and dying litter the fuselage, their bodies twisted among the broken seats. Some cry out for missing friends, realizing many are gone. As night falls, temperatures plummet to deadly lows. The survivors, dressed in thin clothes, huddle together for warmth. Some tend to the injured, using whatever scraps of fabric they can find as bandages. They search for food, finding only a few chocolate bars, crackers, and bottles of wine, which they ration strictly. They also melt snow in tin cans to drink water. The fuselage, though broken, serves as their only protection against the elements. In the freezing darkness, despair sets in, as many silently grieve their lost friends and loved ones. The next morning, the harsh reality of their situation becomes clear. They are stranded in an endless sea of ice and snow, surrounded by towering mountain peaks with no sign of civilization. After assessing their surroundings, some survivors venture outside, hoping to spot a route toward safety, but they are dwarfed by the vast, merciless landscape. With no winter gear or climbing equipment, attempting to escape seems impossible. One survivor finds a transistor radio in the wreckage. Hope flickers as they listen for rescue updates. However, days later they hear heartbreaking news. The search for their plane has been called off. Shocked and devastated, they realize they are truly alone. Some begin to lose hope, but others, like Marcelo Perez and Roberto Canessa, push for a plan to survive and escape. As weeks pass, hunger begins to consume them, their bodies weaken dramatically, and several passengers succumb to their injuries. With no animals or vegetation in the frozen wasteland, their only source of nourishment is the bodies of their deceased friends. A moral and emotional battle ensues. Many refuse at first, repulsed by the thought. Some pray for another solution, while others, like Roberto Canessa, logically argue that they will all die unless they take this step. Eventually, one survivor takes the first bite, and the others reluctantly follow. This choice haunts them deeply, but it sustains them. They cut small portions of flesh and ration it carefully, seeing it as a necessary sacrifice. Despite the horror, this decision keeps them alive. Just as they adapt to survival, a deadly avalanche strikes one night, burying the fuselage in snow. Panic erupts as survivors struggle to dig themselves out. Some are completely buried alive, their muffled screams fading into silence. 8 more people perish, including Marcelo Perez, the rugby team's captain. The survivors, now fewer than ever, are pushed to their breaking point. Many lose hope, some whispering that it might be better to give up. Realizing they cannot wait for rescue, Nando Parrado and Roberto Canessa decide to trek across the mountains in search of help. They craft crude sleeping bags from insulation and fabric and ration their limited supplies. The journey is brutal. They climb towering peaks, wade through deep snow and endure freezing nights. Exhaustion, frostbite, and starvation take their toll. After days of walking, they finally see green valleys, the first sign of life in months. They push forward until they spot a Chilean farmer across a river. Too weak to shout, they use a piece of paper to write a desperate plea for help. The farmer throws them food and rides off to alert authorities. Days later, rescue helicopters arrive at the crash site. The remaining 16 survivors are airlifted to safety, their skeletal frames and sunken eyes shocking the world. Families are reunited in tears, but the media frenzy focuses on the cannibalism, casting a dark shadow over their return. The survivors grapple with guilt, loss, and trauma, haunted by memories of those who didn't make it.